I think that's where a lot of our resilience comes in. And it's not that, we are willing to take the pain and the pressure. No, it's just that we've dealt with it for so long. I think that we process it in a different way. Or is that true?
Yeah, and to your point, it comes to a boiling point when we as a people, or another group of people for that matter, have just kind of had enough. And so if you keep getting the short end of the stick and you keep getting decisions made that are unfavorable towards you, at some point in time, you reach your boiling point. And that actually is what tends to happen, not all the time, but what tends to happen with kind of workplace violence. Someone feels wronged in some way and they've attempted to resolve it, and that hasn't worked, and they have other personal problems in their life. And at some point, they boil over and they decide that I'm going to express my anger in a way that shows you that I am not okay with this. And of course, we see it as someone's gone postal, right? Like they were crazy. They couldn't control themselves. When many times, not all the time, but when many times it comes right back to they felt wronged over and over and over. They were unheard and they needed to vent that anger in some way. And so, of course, no one's going to condone someone engaged in workplace violence. But when you pick apart the details of what led to it, many times you can understand why they got there.
And that's why I really wanted to have this conversation. We have got to get to the bottom of our issues, not just as Black people, as all people. We have got to pay attention to why things are happening the way they are. This platform, the Bay Area Mental Health Hour, is about mental health, but it is about the bigger picture, the whole human being. This is basically news, but I am tackling the news by looking at the whole person and trying to get to the root of issues and the root of the reasons why we make the news the way we do. So I want to also ask you, Doctor, about Black people in particular. Do we deal with our anger in a different way compared to other groups?
That's a great question. It's a great question. Well, it has less to do with race and ethnicity than it does with feeling as if you are not in power, right? So if you take a group of people, whether they're African American, whether they're Asian, whether they are low SES or anyone, and when you feel as if you do not have power for change, and you add in the unfortunate situation where your current situation is unfavorable, you have no hope, you have no skills and no resources, or at least perceptually speaking, at some point in time, you got to do something different. And if you look at the suicide rates, and you look at different ways in which we emote that doesn't really resonate with people, it tends to be with people who are not of power. And so the self-inflicted pain or suicide can look very differently. It can look like direct suicide and oh my God, it's so terrible. Why would someone choose to take their own life? Once again, it tends to be hopeless. It tends to be someone who doesn't feel empowered. And it tends to be, I don't see any way out of this. But that same behavior can also look like a community in which self-infliction can result in the killing of each other, right? Mm-hmm. So when we see each other on the street, we may look at someone who looks like us and see ourselves. Mm-hmm. And we may engage in violence against that person, and it has very little to do with that person. It has to do with us. But given that this is a quote unquote easy target, or someone who I can exhibit frustration against, it results in the same basic end result anyway. Someone has been attacked, beaten, or even killed. And of course, it's very easy to look at quote unquote black on black crime. Certainly, the same thing happens in the white community and of other races. And as we
Right.
know, that the rates of black on black crime, white on white crime, and so forth is higher because of this concept that I'm talking about. People at times don't decide to engage in personal self-infliction, but they find it easier to engage in that same harm against others who look like them. And you can take a history of people and you can really see the fact that this group of people has been struggling for quite some time. And no wonder it is that the violence rate is so high in this community. No wonder it is that the murder rate is so high in this community. No wonder it is that that you find people who are breaking into things and stealing things, and just the criminalization period is so high. That tends to be a form of self-inflicted anger and displaced anger in itself.